Hi, I'm Sharaad Kuttan and welcome to Let's Talk, the show that brings you the most important conversations of the day. And what could be more important than books and stories and ideas and illustration? They come together in graphic novel form and comic form. Now, help me in this conversation, I have the co-founder of Maple Comics. He is Amir Hafizi. He's also one of the writers of an upcoming fantasy light novel series called NAFIRI. He, together with Fairul Nizam and Anis Suhaila, are members of Maple Comics. Maple Comics, spelled like maple, but actually pronounced Maple as in the Tamil word for bridegroom.
Bridegroom, yes.
Tell us, let's start with that. I mean, why did you call your comic company, using a Tamil word?
The thing is, when Fairul Nizam and I conceived the idea for the comics company, we were always having our meetings at a Maple. Now, we are old people, so we come from the 90s, where Mamak restaurants or Indian restaurants are all lumped together as Maples.
Oh, really?
And the reason being because whenever the waiter comes up with something hot or he wants people to get out of the way, he would say, Maple, Maple, Maple. You know,
oh, right. Lovely, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so we actually were colleagues at a newspaper some years ago, right?
Yeah.
And so you have an interesting side because you have, part of you is a journalist, part of you work many jobs, I understand. But tell us, how did you get into comics and why have comics become an important part of your professional life? Okay,
well, I've always been into comics since I was young. And then in 2014, I had a massive heart attack. So I almost died. 1/3 of my heart is dead. And after being discharged, I survived, obviously. And after being discharged, I actually called up Roy, Fairul Nizam. I said, Roy, I want to do this before I die. So I emotionally blackmailed him to pushing the titles forward, because otherwise we would be waiting for another few years. After that, hopefully some people would have finished their comics. But we were lucky and we got our first title published in December that year. I had the heart attack in August. So it goes to show that if you really want something, then you can actually do it in 4 months.
Okay, absolutely, a wonderful, inspiring story. Let's look at your childhood, because I think a lot of us have childhood influences, and I remember the rich kids in my class always had Beano, and they had access to that, and we always, with great envy, would look at their comic collection. Where were you getting your comics from? What were you reading? Was it Japanese? Was it American? What was it?
I tried to get my hands on anything I can because my parents don't actually give me any money at all. I had no pocket money, so I would beg, borrow, and whatever else. I had some issues of gila-gila, which were not considered children's material at the time. It was quite political, it was quite sophisticated. There was also...
I think Zuna worked for gila-gila for a while, didn't he? Or possibly, anyway.
Possibly. Yeah. I preferred Long, though. The Malay Dilemma series that he did in Gila-gila was fantastic. And then there's also like Batu Api, Geli Hati, all these things.
So it was local comics that you had your exposure to most?
Yes, I read a translated Iron Man somewhere in a coffee shop somewhere in my kampung, but that was it. It was later when The Sun had this magazine, remember?
Yes, I worked for it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I did.
I really appreciated that because it was my first exposure to some really wonderful comics, like The Sandman. It was really good. I was in high school, so we had that, and a lot of my friends had more money, so they bought all these Hong Kong comics. So I was also into Hong Kong comics. Some of them bought manga, Japanese manga, and I was also into manga. And magazine had this like Western comics. I was like, yeah, it's too expensive to buy because I couldn't even afford like 1 ringgit 80 cents for the Hong Kong comics. So.
And Azmi Sharom, who's now with the Election Commission, who's a law lecturer, used to write reviews of comics for the Sun newspaper. So, okay, so for many of us, comics are something we leave behind, kind of graduate from comics. But there are obviously people who stay with comics. Comics is a lifelong obsession. Why is that so? I mean, what is it that's special about comics?
Well, it's a medium, just like anything else. It's like movies, it's like books, it's like songs, poetry, whatever else. It is a medium, and the thing about it, the cool thing about it for me is that not many people are into it, not many people are doing it. So it's easy for you to be distinguished by claiming this in the name of your own, or something like that. And also because of the specific things. This one goes into Scott McCloud's theory about comics and understanding comics and reinventing comics, about the very special ways comics can actually tell stories between it. Actually, the movements, the emotions, the sound, and everything else. The movie actually happens in your head. It is between the gutters of panels, that kind of stuff. So if we want to talk about that, it will take about...
So your mind sort of animates what you see.
Yes.
That is static in the different panels on
Yes.
the page. I want to ask you about, developing this idea. So NAFIRI has been reported as a crowdfunding success, and that's how, in fact, in many ways, you're on the show because of it. I believe the illustrator that you work with, Zami, M. Zain, conceived of it 2 decades ago. That's a long gestation period for an idea. Is that true?
Actually, I conceived the story 2 decades ago, and I approached Zamzami with it after he rejected another one of my stories. So I've always wanted to work with Zamzami. He's I think one of the best artists in Malaysia, honestly speaking. You can see from his artwork that it's really good, he's really detailed, he really puts into it. It takes a long time, but you have to wait for great things to happen. So I approached...
Okay, so you conceived the ideas.
Yes.
Okay. And what is the relationship between a writer and illustrator?
For this, because it's a light novel, what I do is we have long discussions, long late night discussions about the characters I want to do, and he comes up with the character designs first, and then I map out the story. I tell him the story, he reads the stories as well, and we each pick a scene that he wants to illustrate, because the format of a light novel is a short novel with illustrations. So which illustrations, which scenes that needs to be illustrated actually depends on the agreement of both of us. So it's symbiotic.
So it's symbiotic, you're kind of giving each other, because clearly when you write, you have an image in your head as well of what your character looks like. But they're not just simply slavish to your creative imagination, are they?
For example, one of the more popular characters among online readers so far, I mean online fans, online followers of the series so far, is this guy called Puing. So I envision him as a short, bald guy. He's the strongest, and he wields a big sword or something like that. So Zamzami took that and said, no, I don't want to do short, bald guy. So he drew this really beefy, hunky guy, and that is the image that people latch onto. So...
Were you disappointed? Were you? I mean, because you had this idea of... there are traditions where the hero doesn't look like a conventional hero, I mean, I think the French are famous for their kind of odd-looking heroes, right? So in that tussle, how did Zamzami win out?
No, I bow to a better interpretation. I mean, it's like if it makes a better product, why not? If you drew him as like some old guy, no, it doesn't fit into the whole young heroes kind of thing. So that wouldn't work. But he interpreted it into something that is really, really gripping. That character has garnered so much attention from people, and it's one of our flagship images when we want to pitch NAFIRI to anyone. Say, look at this, and they were like, wow.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, we'll take a short break and we'll be back with more. I'm speaking to Amir Hafizi, co-founder of Mapla Comics. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Let's Talk. I'm Sharaad. With me, Amir Hafizi, co-founder of Mapla Comics, the writer of NAFIRI, which is an upcoming fantasy, like a novel. It's explained to me as like a novella, but with illustration. So let's give the audience a sense of what the story of NAFIRI is and how, in some ways, how special it is.
Okay, NAFIRI is set in ancient Nusantara, ancient Southeast Asia. And it is set on an island in the middle of Selat Melaka, in the middle of Straits of Malacca. And this island actually usurps all the resources, wealth, fame of Melaka, Temasek, Aceh, Pasai. I'm creating an alternate universe. It's not historical.
But you're doing it by actually scavenging from actual history.
Yes, I'm not trying to be historically accurate at all, but I'm just scavenging whatever I can. So the two main characters also started the story having come back from a 10-year travel to train and to study. One of them is Marwan. He's the main character in the first book. He went to Japan and China. So the other guy is Abdullah. So he went to China and then went through the Silk Road to the Middle East. So he learned stuff like the Damascus steel thing or whatever. So trying to also use these characters to bring all these other stuff like Sun Tzu's Art of War, Hwacha in Korea, all the Tekosen technology, ancient technologies, whatever else. A little bit of a cheat, and then bring them back to NAFIRI. But the main focus is to draw from local heritage and local folklore, legends and myths and whatever else, and try to make something new out of it, which is why I'm doing it in an alternate universe and not like, oh, this is please don't think that this is real history.
Right, and that's probably your privilege, right? As somebody kind of working in the kind of non-fiction area, is you can take from real history and you can make it work together, even though they're from different historical periods. Are there other people working in this kind of field as well? I mean, locally, and do you draw inspiration from them, or what's the relationship?
Actually, yeah, there's quite a few. There's ZXU and Munkau, who did the Thousand Islands project, which is more of a tabletop thing, but drawing from local culture and local legends. There's Carrie Slope, who did Kejora, which is, she's a fine artist. So she does this. I think it's a micro-fiction with fine art or something. I mean, I'm not that artistic. I'm into comics, so, but.
There are people like Sean Lee who now works. I think he's got some Malaysian connection. He works in Australia. Beautiful, graphic novel work that he's done. I mean, the graphic comic is really a fine work of fine art. It seems sometimes.
Definitely, I think it's a missed opportunity, because if you want to do fantasy, you'll think of Irish worms and elves and dwarves, but we have something here that maybe the world has not really seen before. There's this guy called Adi Fitri Ahmad whom we publish. His series is called Taubat Sitanggang, which actually combines all the local folklore, myths and legends like Pak Pandey. Not Pak Pandey. It was Luncai, Kancil, Tanggang, Batu Belah, Batu Petangkuk, and have them interact in one universe. And when I saw that, and I saw ZX stuff, and I saw Carrie Slope and Munkau and doing all these things, I was like, wow, I just, I had this story when I was 19, like 20 years ago. Why can't I do this as well?
Right, and that comes to this very interesting idea of people having great ideas but not having the capital or the seed money to start it, and that's where the crowdfunding issue came in. Tell us that story.
Well, for crowdfunding, we saw that Drama Pukul 7 was successful, and some pre-order projects by other publishers were also successful in getting enough funds to do whatever they wanted. But we were also moved by Drama Pukul 7, which is a board game. They did a crowdfunding thing. They wanted to, I think, raise 10,000. They managed to get 15,000, and it drummed up a lot of interest. And what we were thinking at the time was, we'll do this. Even if we fail, we'll at least drum up some interest. It might not be as much as Drama Pukul 7 because they went viral, but we will finally have a marketing package for each of our titles moving forward. So we'll do the same thing. We'll do the crowdfunding component, but do it as a pre-order for all the titles. We didn't know that we were going to succeed.
Yeah, and that's where some good Samaritan apparently steps in and pushes you to the target much sooner than you expected.
Yes.
Now, for people who don't know what crowdfunding is, there is. Because I've participated in some of these things, there is a reward system, right? I mean, it's a way of enticing an investor in, especially small people. People give small amounts, 100, 200, 300 ringgit. Is that enough to take you further? I mean, meaning commercially, is it enough to just have this funded and have distribute the books? And what is it that you, as a business person, as a business proposition, comics, what is it that you're hoping for?
We're hoping that people would be more accustomed or more used to crowdfunding, and if they are interested in some of the titles or even in supporting some of the movements, because some of the stuff that we publish actually have some sort of benefit to society behind them, whatever else. So they can actually push that as well, and not just us. I mean, there are others. I would love to see Drama Pukul 7 have an expansion set. And please support ZX and Sharon Chin, ZXU and Sharon Chin and Munkau and all those people, and Carrie Slope. She has a Patreon, by the way. which is something else. But if crowdfunding is a viable platform for artists and creators, I think that would be great. At the same time, as for Marplet Comics, we will maybe do crowdfunding for some special events. We won't be doing crowdfunding for all our titles, but definitely we want to take the marketing elements of the crowdfunding campaign for our pre-order campaigns. So now...
I do want to ask you this. Now, one of the things that has given a boost to comics, of course, is the animation of the comics. And in recent times, you know, DC Comics, Marvel, of course, going to our big screens and, you know, and all that. What's your take on that? I mean, is this something that you would like to see happen? Do you think it's a natural thing? If you have a great story, that somebody's going to want to buy it in order to transform it on a different platform?
Hopefully, yes, because we've seen, for example, locally, last year in 2019, Agent Ali managed to, it's still showing in the cinemas. It's a fantastic movie, by the way. Have you seen it?
No.
Oh, it's fantastic. You should watch it. I think it's one of the best Malaysian movies in the past 20 years. So they managed to, now it's the third highest grossing movie in Malaysian history.
30 million or something.
It's 30 million so far.
Yeah.
You have Upin Ipin Chris Yamantunggal also managed to do like, I think 20 plus, I forgot.
Upin Ipin is the kiddies one, right?
Yeah, the kiddies one. I watched that as well.
Okay.
Yeah, and that one I think reached, and that was almost nominated for an Oscar. I mean, it was a shame they did it. It was also a good movie, and also there was Boba Boy. So it shows that even though people are whining about the local film industry, the animation industry is really capturing the imagination of Malaysians, both young and old. I'm an old guy. I watched Agent Ali. I was thoroughly entertained. It was really good.
Okay. What about the? Okay. I mean, I wonder if this is a question for purists who think, oh, you know, there is the form, the light novel, or as we were talking earlier, you mentioned panels and the use of our imagination when we read. Comics. Movies do something very different to the characters. Is that something that you think is good or bad, or how do you respond to the transformation of what is essentially work on a two-dimensional surface into film?
Well, I always see the incarnations or manifestations of the stories on different mediums as different things. For example, I love Watchmen, the comic book. I'm okay with Watchmen, the movie. I really hated Watchmen, the TV series. Actually, I thought it was another Damon Lindelof punya screw job, basically.
Okay, but so the thing is, do you think there is pressure on comic, creators to create stories that can translate easily onto different platforms? Is there pressure happening there?
Well, that's hardly happened yet so far. I mean, look at the current success stories of Agent Ali, Upin Ipin, and Boba Boy. I think they were all created by the studios themselves, right? So those were IPs created specifically for that medium. I don't know what was it. Kampung Boy was adapted by a Japanese. I don't think that question is being asked yet by local creators, but I would love it if that's the challenge. The challenge is you have to make it adaptable for all these platforms. It means that the creative community and the creative industry would have multiple streams of revenue to keep them alive and not have them do other things like a
day job, like Grab or something.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to ask you in the last few minutes that we have before we go to a break, back to NAFIRI, what is the language of this world? Did you have to create a new language? Because that's often really tricky and very interesting.
Yes, there were several ideas. One of them was to do pure classic Malay, which won't work because nobody reads classic Malay. Okay lah, there would be maybe 3 people who would appreciate it, would understand it, and it would definitely fail in attracting the young readers, which is what we wanted to do in the first place. So it's basically something, what I came up with was something equivalent to Forcepear, like fake Shakespeare.
Oh,
so
okay.
it's like...
so like fake archaic Malay.
Fake archaic Malay. It's not really archaic, but what I do is, the first thing is I ban all the usage of modern words, English words, derivative words like gate, misi, whatever, all those things. I cannot use that. So kita mesti menyertai rombongan ini instead of kita mesti kita mesti menyertai misi ini. No, it doesn't because you want to get the people to be engrossed in the world, to be enamored in it, and if you use any of these modern words, they'll be shocked. So I'm asking the editor right now to look at it for a 5th time to see if there's any of that has come out, because I'm just afraid. I'm paranoid about suddenly there's the word gate there or something. Wait, tunggu saya di gate itu. Oh no, people.
Okay, we'll take a short break and we'll be back with more. Stay tuned to Let's Talk. Welcome back to Let's Talk. I'm Sharaad. With me, Amir Hafizi, co-founder of Maplet Comics, or writer of NAFIRI, and also Maplet Comics has some other projects, FANTASI KUASA, which could be the story of Malaysian politics, Barisan Nasional Muafakat Nasional against Pakatan Harapan. No, it isn't.
Actually, the Malaysian premier is there in FANTASI KUASA, as well as Donald Trump, Jacinda Ardern, Vladimir Putin, and a bunch of other people.
Are they in FANTASI KUASA?
Yes, but I don't refer to them by name. I call them the president of Russia, because I don't know who will be the president of US by that time. It could be AOC or Bernie Sanders or something. I don't know.
It could be by a long shot. Okay, now, so are these also fantasy light novels?
Yes. Well, here's the thing. FANTASI KUASA is another light novel I'm writing at the same time, because I felt constricted writing that semi-archaic, fake archaic language. So we've been writing it, and it's a sci-fi rom-com, superhero, about a guy who can transform matter into energy, and it's also it's influenced a little bit by my obsession with Lisa Manoban from Blackpink.
Is that a real person or character?
No, she's a real character. It's Lisa Manoban is the main dancer from Blackpink, the K-pop group.
Oh, I see. These are names that flying right over my head. Okay.
And JEJON di JEPUN 4 is actually the 4th in a series, is by John Suraya. She about a few years ago, she got a scholarship from the Japanese government to do a PhD in manga studies in Japan.
All right. So she's a Malaysian.
She's a Malaysian. So she's been documenting her adventures, her quirky, cute adventures over there. A Malaysian lady in tudung in Japan, a young woman, and this is the 4th book, and we hope to finish the whole thing by the 5th or 6th book. And this is running up to the conclusion to the series, and we have some merchandise coming out as well. There will be like lanyards and T-shirts and special packages.
Okay, for light novels, what is the typical circulation? I mean, what kind of figures are you hitting? You know, and that actually makes sense on a commercial basis as well.
One of the reasons why we did it as a crowdfunding thing, and we pushed the marketing a bit, is because NAFIRI is the first time we're doing a light novel. But we have had experience with illustrated storybooks before, with Scenes of the Father, which is something I wrote as well. And it has done well. It has gone into, I think, second printing, so we're happy with that. There's also the success story of ZXU and Sharon Chin's Creatures of Near Kingdoms, which is more like a monster manual, but the format is almost, I mean, it's weird. Like, the stuff they come up with is weird, but that one is selling really fast, actually. So we think people might want, we're guessing, but you know, it's a fun guess, that they want to see pictures and they want to read more than just dialogue bubbles. Maybe there's an audience for that, I think.
All right, okay. And we're talking about hundreds, thousands, hundreds of thousands? No, what are we talking about?
Ours is a small company, actually. It's very small.
Is the market small as well?
The market, that's the thing. No one's actually keeping track. So I can't really tell you, but I'm guessing it's small.
Okay. Well, okay, so all these projects are coming online in time for the KL International Book Festival, is that
yes.
right? Yeah, which is March 27 to April 5th, you told me. Why there? I mean, why is this an important kind of milestone in the year for you as a publisher?
Yeah, because during the PBAKL at PWTC, if it's at PWTC, usually it is one of the main places where we sell, where publishers actually get to engage with a lot of readers, and where we actually sell a lot of books during that time. That's our opportunity. It's not just for me, it's actually for a bunch of other people as well. And it is really crazy. I think the figures are, years before it was 2 million plus people would come over a period of 10 days. And in recent years it's about 1.6. I mean, people have dropped. recently because of the economy and other things.
I can still browse, I think, and just flip through books.
through,
Okay, so that's coming up again, the KL International Book Festival, March 27th, April 5th. Your books are going to have a stand there, I assume?
Yes.
Yeah. How do people buy? Can they purchase books online and your stuff? Where would they go?
They can go to Mapla Comics website, maplacomics.com.my, MAPLECOMICS.com.my.
So maplacomics.com, is it?
.my.
.my. Okay. Thank you so much, Amir, for being with me on the show.
Thank you for having me.
We've been talking about comics with Amir Hafizi. He is the co-founder of Mapla Comics, called Maple, but pronounced Mapla. And he's co-founder along with Spiral Nizam and Anis Suhaila. And we look forward to the success of their projects. Come back next week. I'm going to be here. This is Let's Talk, only on Astro One.